Hello. Yes, that's right. It's another offline segment, which means that, in all likelihood, this was probably recorded like an hour before it went live. I haven't showered yet. We're nice and groggy. Just woke up. I've had a really bad headache the past 2 days, so just working through it. Still have one now, but I'm a trooper. Okay, bravest one out there. So we're gonna make it through this together. This is a subject that I've refrained from covering on stream for a bit because honestly, it's so grim. But I'm actually glad I'm covering it offline, in part because I'm not wearing pants right now, which is just cozy, and also because I don't want chat distracting me. So, I promised you guys memes, okay? But let's uh let's do a little preamble first, okay? The Ukraine-Russia situation has gotten, I think, quite scary. So, for those of you who don't know, the Ukraine it used to be a part of the broader Soviet Union, geopolitical sphere of influence. And since the collapse of the Soviet Union, Ukraine has been pulled in two directions. On one hand, towards, of course, Russia, its historical ally, and on the other hand, towards Western Europe, the EU, NATO, and there's quite a stark division in the Ukraine. Back in 2014, you probably remember Russia's annexing of Crimea, which is a southern peninsula of Ukraine. At least I think it's in the south. My memory is a bit foggy at the moment, and I'm quite groggy. But essentially, what happened was the Ukraine. They ousted. They didn't have a president who was pro Russia anymore. It's sort of the rejection of pro-Russian politics. And in response, Russia just invaded. Look, modern day annexations and invasions of territory are quite rare, for good reason. And that reason is that we live in a post-nuclear uh, society. Uh, any threat which involves the actual capturing of territory is severe enough to at least get leaders talking about the threat of nuclear retaliation. It's really difficult stuff. And Russia has long demonstrated, let's say, clingy X behavior with Ukraine, saying that, Ukraine, you cannot join NATO. NATO troops cannot be, on your time. They call this red lines, like you cannot cross these. Um, I'll be frank about it. I don't want to feign it, nonpartisanship. I think Russia is a very dangerous country. And I believe that they are desperately leveraging the power they have to maintain a fraction of the geopolitical control they had back during the Cold War. I think that they are like a cornered dog with their backs against the wall. I have so many thoughts on this. I'm not entirely sure how to structure them. But look, since the annexation of Crimea, things have gotten quite scary in the Ukraine, as one would expect in a place where territory just got invaded by another country. Russia has been funding secessionary groups in eastern Ukraine who, want to bring things back over to Russia. So there's been a sort of indirect proxy war going on over there. There's quite a lot of fighting in eastern Ukraine. Now, the West has contributed arms to Ukraine proper. I believe America has sent Stinger missiles, Javelin missiles. We've sent something. We've sent something exploding. The UK has pledged to bolster naval bases owned by Ukraine. We're providing assistance, and the reason for that is obvious. First of all, just stated flatly, I think Ukraine has a right to, national autonomy, to sovereignty, which is something that Russia has tried over and over again to undermine. I just think that's a basic, a basic right. And secondly, I think that Russia is rather crudely attempting to reconstruct a sort of border state wall between itself and the West. There are reasons to do this which are strictly military, having a buffer between you so you can fund proxy wars and all that business. And it also, it's valuable to Russia to have that insulation. China does the same thing with North Korea. After all, if there was one Korea controlled by what is now the South Korean government, they would essentially have a Western ally right against their doorstep. North Korea is a buffer state. I don't think China likes North Korea very much. I think they just like having a buffer state against South Korea, which makes sense geopolitically. Um, Either way, things have escalated massively recently. Satellite photos have shown tens of thousands, I think about 75,000 Russian troops massing near Crimea, near the current Ukrainian border. And, threats of escalation have been levied by both sides. Russia says, do not cross the red lines. Do not send NATO troops into Ukraine. Don't, do not. Don't. Uh, Whereas, of course, the West is saying there will be consequences if Russia invades Ukraine. Russia says they will not, but I don't trust Russia for. It's not as far as I can throw them. It's the world's largest country. I can't throw it very far at all. Um, U.S. military intelligence says that if Russia were to invade, early 2022 would be a strategically opportune point for them to do so. In which case, consequences abound. Now let's take a look at the meme that I promised you all. This is from Ukraine's official Twitter. How delightful is that, huh? I'm not so highfalutin that I can't appreciate uh, a nation getting nearly 500,000 likes on a geopolitical meme. You see, actually, probably got quite a few people who didn't know about the situation beforehand interested in the conflict. It's quite alarming. I think seeing a nation post something like this. But anyway, as you can see, it's quite funny. There's another one here with Taiwan, which is funny. It's not actually Taiwan itself; it's an NGO, but it's still quite funny, I think. Now, I I want to talk about reprisal. I understand that I have a very large non-interventionist portion of my community, which is great. I'm also a big fan of non-interventionism. I'm also a big fan of avoiding appeasement when possible. See, we've learned this lesson. If you let bad countries do bad things without, any meaningful consequences, you're not really, placating them or stalling for peace. You're just sort of kicking the can down the road, letting them get stronger and more determined and more ambitious until eventually you have to deal with them. What's happening right now? I mean, the annexation of Crimea was insane on its own. What's happening right now with the Ukraine is genuinely terrifying because it could escalate into real military aggression between Russia and the West, NATO, whatever. And there are a lot of nuclear weapons at play. Now, there are non-military reprisals possible. Am I using reprisal correctly? Reprisal. Why do I... Right, yeah? Act of retaliation. Yeah, okay, I'm using it. Yeah, okay. There are non-military reprisals. Sanctions is a common one. We actually had strict sanctions on Russia, which were loosened by the Trump administration, because Trump, Putin, buddy, which is, I think, quite bad. I actually quite support, I think, well-targeted sanctions against Russia. Another threat, which has been brought up recently, I think just a few days ago, was the disconnection of Russia from SWIFT, which is a kind of international banking communication system that would we've done the same with Iran in the past. That would massively hurt their economy. It would cut them off from an international stream of revenue and communication. Now, again, to my non-interventionist friends, chew on head. Hello, Kyle Klinsky. Yeah, I don't know if you'll watch, but listen, when I imagine effective non-interventionism, it's don't cause problems. You can fix problems if you want. If there's a genocide going on, and honest to God, there's a way your involvement can improve things. And that's not impossible. I know the United States has a, let's say, really awful track record when it comes to responsible meddling in other countries, but it's not impossible that we could do something good. I think our involvement in World War II was, at least at the broader scale, largely justified. I do not think Russia can be allowed to get away with further military action against the Ukraine. The fact that they got away with the annexation of Crimea was insane enough to begin with. They are trying to claw their way back to a position of geopolitical military relevance the way they had back during the Cold War. The thing is, Russia is not a strong, prosperous country, okay? China is a strong, prosperous country. The United States is a strong, prosperous country. Russia is not. Russia was hollowed out by oligarchs after the Cold War. And since that time, you can see it in essentially every demographic measurement. They are not doing great. I think that part of it is about recapturing lost glory. Putin has maintained a decent amount of local support, not through making the country a better place to live in, but rather through, rekindling sort of Soviet nationalism of the new age of discrimination against minority groups, homosexuals, stuff like that. Classic way of stoking fervor, really, tried and true, West or not West. If your ratings aren't going well, start a war. Worked for Bush, at least post 9/11, he had a surge of support and he capitalized on it. I think Thatcher also did that, used war as a way of sort of shoring up your popular support. My history's not great. Look, Russia's dangerous. They're like a dying dog backed into a corner. And I support pretty much any humanitarian measure, and by humanitarian I mean, like, let's not go firebombing Moscow or whatever, let's not go killing civilians, to cripple them. We live in a crazy world. We don't live in a world where it's possible to just depose of dictators anymore, at least not if they're nuclear powers, as Russia is. Imagine if a Hitler rose today. What would you do? I mean, in all likelihood, the country that Hitler rose in, Hitler too, would have nuclear weapons. How do you deal with that? I mean, if they just start invading nearby countries, what do you do? I'm looking towards chat. There is no chat. I don't even have the window open. Seriously, what do you do? I don't have an answer to that. It seems like you either sanction the ever-loving shit out of them. I mean, you just gut their economy and hope they don't interpret it as a declaration of war, as many countries have threatened to in the past following severe sanctions. Or you pull the old CIA, real sneaky, real quiet, sometime in the dead of night, Hitler 2 goes bye-bye, and, oh, what's that? Hitler 2's twin brother? Oh, what a coincidence. They're very pro-business relationships with the West. I'm being a bit silly about this. I don't really know what to say. I mean, Russia has a huge nuclear arsenal. They are fiercely nationalistic. They don't have much to lose. I expect countries to behave in a rational self-interest. This is why I'm not too worried about war with China, because China's growing economy is maintained through positive trade relationships with the West. I mean, that's what they're banking on, If their economy goes kaput, public support for the CCP goes down, and they know that. So keeping the economy rolling is priority number one for those people. And that is a kind of, mutually assured destruction. If war takes place between China and the West, those trade relationships are going bye-bye. And I mean, even if the West came out militarily the loser, which I don't think we would, I mean, China would lose massively, and there would be civil unrest as a product of that. There might even be, I don't know how much domestic food China produces. There could be, I mean, famine. It could be bad. We rely on each other. This is one of the benefits of a global economy. Global economies are meshed. They're interdependent. It means that there are real consequences to fighting war with other countries, even if you win without taking any losses, even if it's a clean sweep, because the sanctions, the economic retaliation can be more devastating than any war. We had sanctions on Russia, pretty harsh ones that have been lifted. If they were sanctioned into oblivion, would they just lash out? Is there rational self-interest at this moment to be the rabid dog that they act like, Uh, I don't know. You know, everyone postures, but at the end of the day, we're playing with the highest dice imaginable, and the outcomes, if leaders on either side misjudge, could be devastating. I know that morally and strategically, you can't just let Russia continue to get away with what it's doing. But on the other hand, I also know that there's a real possibility that any form of retaliation could be met with escalating warfare on both sides until eventually you hear your, uh, you know, phone and TV blare with an emergency broadcast notification from the U.S. government telling you that you have 12 minutes to find an underground shelter. I don't mean to be alarmist. World War III takes place. It's pretty much China, Taiwan, India, Pakistan, or Russia, Ukraine. And right now, Russia, Ukraine's the scariest right now. And that's why they're posted the memes. The other option is a coup. Morally, if it was possible, if I could snap my fingers, would I coup Russia? I mean, would I, let's say the CIA just sneak on in there and replace them with a pro-Western, whatever. I mean, I don't want them to be like pro-Western business. Let's just say somebody who's not Putin. Somebody who's not desperately trying to claw their way back to Cold War era glory. Yeah, I would. I would do that in a heartbeat. Absolutely. I talked a big game about national sovereignty a little bit ago, but there's a big difference about protecting a nation's sovereignty to not be invaded by Russia and protecting a nation's sovereignty to invade the Ukraine and threaten nuclear warfare. Russia's in a bad spot. Just geopolitically, they're incentivized towards all the wrong behaviors right now. And I don't really know what to do about that. The reliable method that it's worked with other countries, at least it worked with China, is if they develop strong enough trade relations and then have an internal, if the citizenry of Russia is reliant upon the economic gains brought to them by good trade relationships with the West, to the point that a loss of those gains could cause civil unrest, that would be a stabilizing mechanism right there, wouldn't it? But I don't know if that's the case, because I feel like Russia's population is drunk on blood. I don't know. Their approval priorities are beyond me. Anyway, that's my non-interventionist take. We live in scary times. I hope I don't ever hear those emergency, broadcast sirens myself. Just, oh God, my head. Oh, I'm just now realizing that there's a box behind me. We got a box. The cats were playing in it. I haven't moved it yet. They were jumping and, rolling around in the paper. Anyway, I'm not a geopolitical expert, so maybe there are people, maybe, I don't know, like maybe Dylan Burns will watch this on stream and go, oh my God, Vaush, you clown, you fool, you fucking, you imbecile. I don't think he will, but, maybe I'm open to having my mind changed. I know there's a lot of complicated stuff going on here. I'm just begging you guys, okay? I understand that American military interventionism is just, on the whole, not a great thing. Please have a more nuanced take on whatever is going to happen with Russia than saying U.S. should keep their hands off of it. I beg of you, okay? Don't be Chamberlain, okay? Don't be so ideologically committed to opposition to the United States that you ignore having or that you avoid having a real opinion on such a consequential matter, okay? Yo, it's me. From 2 seconds later, I just realized that I was a bit doomer there. Uh, it could turn out nothing really does happen. Maybe Russia backs off. It's all just a posturing game. I was thinking in my head, like, well, at the end, I'll say, well, it could turn out nothing happens, but then I ended on like nuclear raid sirens. Listen, maybe nothing happens. Maybe it could be okay. Okay. In fact, it's likely that nothing super drastic will happen, but it's important to be aware of this stuff. Yes. So is there anything else I can't, I have a headache. I'm tired. Is there anything else that I meant to say? I didn't acknowledge my dirty dishes. They're there because I ate food off of them. Okay, I think that's enough. Just